Give me a few minutes, and you will see that what you've long called weakness is not your essence, but only a story you've repeated so many times that you began to believe it was real. You were not born to bow your head. You were trained to become predictable. From the praise you received when you were obedient, to the warnings that followed whenever you dared to resist, layer by layer, society wrapped you in submission and called it virtue. But Nietzsche never wrote for the obedient. He did not waste his pages on those who seek comfort. He wrote for the ones exhausted by pretense, for those who have looked life straight in the eye and realized nothing is coming to save you except yourself. And if you are at that point, when constant apologies choke your breath, when silence for the sake of peace only erases you, when fear has eaten you down to the roots, then this is not the time to become a better version of yourself. This is the time to reclaim the version that has always existed underneath. The version that does not ask for permission to exist. The version that does not hide its instinct just because the crowd feels uneasy. This video does not promise to make you comfortable. It promises only one thing: to tear apart the shell that has kept you small for far too long, so you can finally see the truth clearly, that what you've called weakness was never you. Think back to the last time you called yourself weak. Maybe it was when you cried in front of someone. Maybe it was when you lost control in an argument. But Nietzsche would tell you that was not weakness. Tears are not a weakness. Anger is not weakness. True weakness happens in the silent moments, when you know you want to object but instead force a smile, when you want to leave but stay just to avoid displeasing someone. Weakness is the moment you betray yourself in exchange for cheap acceptance. Look closely at your daily life. You wake up and grab your phone before you even take a deep breath. The day hasn't started, yet you've already handed it away. You walk into work, hear an absurd demand, but instead of saying no, you nod. You enter a relationship, feel yourself being disrespected, but instead of leaving, you whisper to yourself, "At least someone is still here." Each small act, repeated again and again, hardens into identity, and one day you sit down, sigh, and mutter, "Maybe I was born weak." That illusion is exactly what Nietzsche wanted to tear apart. Because here is the brutal truth. Society rewards you for keeping your weakness. Schools applaud you for being silent, for not asking questions. Culture claps when you sacrifice your own needs for harmony. Even the people you love sometimes benefit from your softness. They call it kindness, humility, and being considerate. But look from another angle. All those praises keep you in one place. Small, predictable, safe for others, but hollow to yourself. And then what happens? You become addicted to comfort. You convince yourself that peace is more important than truth. You choose avoidance over confrontation. You apologize not because you are wrong, but because you fear being disliked. Bit by bit, you trade away truth for harmony. And that is the heaviest price, unseen by others, but felt by you. An emptiness that erodes you, a fatigue that no amount of sleep can erase. Nietzsche called this the tragedy of the one who forgets their instinct. Weakness is not born from a lack of strength. Weakness is what happens when you've lived too long as a domesticated version of yourself. Tamed, so the crowd can rest assured you will never be dangerous. But what torments you most is not their gaze. It is the voice inside, growing louder every day, asking you a single question: how much longer? Nietzsche once wrote, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. But that battle is not fought with sticks or swords. It happens inside your mind every single day. The tribe is the endless chorus of 'you should,' you must, that society plants within you. They turn obedience into morality, silence into wisdom, and endurance into virtue. And you, longing to belong, agreed to live by those rules. Look closer. When you nod just to please, are you truly strong? Or are you only hiding your fear of rejection? When you call avoidance peace, are you not choosing escape over confrontation? When you accept the role of the nice one in every situation, are you still yourself, or just a pleasant shadow of the collective? This is the domestication Nietzsche sought to expose. No one forced weakness upon you. You chose to wear the mask of obedience in exchange for acceptance. You've seen it in your own life. The last time you swallowed your protest, do you remember the hollow ache that followed? The last time you agreed to something you didn't want, did you hear the small voice in your head whisper, "I have betrayed myself once again"? Those moments seem trivial, but they are the exact instance when you fracture pieces of your inner backbone. Nietzsche would never call this kindness. He called it a compromise with mediocrity, and he warned, the moment you stop being dangerous, the moment you stop letting truth pour through your words, you have already died while still alive. A person who carries no weight, who no longer makes anyone pause, will soon be devoured and forgotten by the crowd. Picture a room where everyone wears a mask. They smile, they shake hands, they say the right things. Only you feel suffocated by the falseness. If you choose to keep your mask on, you will remain inside, but you will vanish within the crowd. If you take it off, eyes will turn toward you, some with judgment, some with discomfort, but at least in that moment, you exist. This is the message Nietzsche wanted carved into your memory. Weakness is not born from lack of strength, but from letting domestication win. And there is only one way to break it. Refuse the comfortable mask, even if it means the world turns its back on you. You were not born with weakness. You learned it. School taught you to sit still, follow orders, and wait for permission before you speak. Family taught you to be rewarded when obedient, punished when defiant. Society taught you that if you want love, you must be pleasant, and if you want to stay, you must yield. Day after day, you shrank yourself and called it morality. But that is not morality. That is domestication. The world does not need you to be garrulous. It needs you to be predictable. It praises you when you are silent. It encourages you when you endure, and it calls you a good person when you abandon your instincts. And you believed it. You willingly strapped the mask of the meek onto your own face. But Nietzsche saw the truth. This is not a choice. This is a program. A program designed to keep you safe for others, but harmless to yourself. You felt it already. When you agree to something while every part of you wants to say no. When you force a smile at an insult. When you apologize just to keep the peace, even though you weren't wrong. These actions look like wisdom, but in reality, they are cuts. Small, sharp slices into your own dignity. Repeat them long enough, and you start calling it personality. And so, weakness becomes identity. Modern life is built to maintain this weakness. Education trains you to obey. Culture forces you to conform. The media pumps you full of helplessness disguised as awareness. Even those who claim to love you often benefit from your predictability. They praise your sacrifices. They celebrate your selflessness. They applaud your restraint. Not because it serves you, but because it keeps you small, dependent, controllable, and forgettable. This is the truth Nietzsche wanted you to confront. Weakness is not innate, it is trained. You were conditioned to choose comfort over truth, silence over speech, submission over confrontation. And unless you break this program, you will keep living as a domesticated version of yourself, obedient, safe, but hollow. If you're still here, I want you to remember one thing. The most dangerous enemy is not fear. The most dangerous enemy is when you begin to believe that weakness is a virtue. In the next part, we will rip off that mask with an image you will never forget. And once you see it, you will understand why only those who dare to shed their skin are the ones who truly survive. Nietzsche once said, "The snake that cannot shed its skin must die." That is not a poetic metaphor. It is a warning. A snake that carries its old skin for too long will suffocate inside its own shell. And so will you. Look at your life. How many layers of skin are you carrying? The skin of the good child, always afraid to disappoint. The skin of the agreeable employee, nodding just to get by. The skin of the silent lover, biting your tongue to keep a relationship intact. Each one stacked, each one binding you tighter until you move like someone chained. You call it personality, but in truth, it is only rotting skin. Shedding is never easy. The snake must scrape against stone, tear against branches, and endure pain to rip apart the husk fused to its flesh. You will go through the same. When you begin saying no instead of nodding, you will notice how people's eyes change. When you set boundaries, someone will call you selfish. When you stop being endlessly soft, someone will leave. These are the scratches on your skin. And if you can endure them, you will discover what has been waiting underneath. A version polished, stronger, alive. Weakness does not disappear through prayer. It disappears only when you accept the pain of discarding the shell that kept you small. The price of transformation is always loss. You will lose easy acceptance. You will lose relationships that existed only because you knew how to bow. But you will regain something far greater. You will regain your own breath. And here lies the truth most people never dare to face. They choose to stay in the old skin until it strangles them into a domesticated, harmless, predictable version. But you are not here to die inside that shell. You are here to tear it apart. And only when you dare to shed it will you know what freedom truly feels like. If you look back on a single day, you'll see that weakness doesn't hide far away. It shows itself in your smallest reflexes. You receive a message that irritates you, but instead of saying what you truly feel, you type a softer reply with a smiling emoji. You sit in a meeting, your idea gets cut off. You prepare to speak, but swallow it down, whispering to yourself, "I'll let it go for now." You're in a relationship, and more than once you feel dismissed, but instead of confronting it, you reassure yourself, everyone has flaws. On the surface, these moments seem harmless, but psychologically, each time you choose silence, you send a message to your own brain. My voice matters less than their approval. This repetition creates what psychologists call conditioning. The more often you submit, the more your brain links compliance with safety. The result is a pattern. The moment rejection threatens, you instinctively retreat. And this is the exact point where you begin confusing an unconscious reaction with a born trait. You think you are inherently weak, but in truth, you've been trained to live this way. Nietzsche would never call that kindness. He would name it bluntly, self-betrayal. And betraying yourself is one of the fastest ways to drain your inner strength. Because emotions don't disappear when you suppress them. They accumulate. They transform into chronic exhaustion, into quiet self-disgust, into long sleepless nights you can't explain. You're not burned out from work. You're burned out from living every day against what you truly want. If you don't realize this, you will continue to be praised as obedient and considerate. But those compliments only cover up a darker truth. You are slowly becoming invisible. No one sees who you really are, because even you have forgotten. And this is the warning Nietzsche wanted etched into you. If you don't confront it, weakness will not only strip you of your strength, it will strip you of your very identity. What you call weakness is not your essence. It is only a role you have repeated so many times that you forgot it was an act. And like any act, you can walk off stage the moment you dare to call it by its real name. Psychology calls this cognitive reframing. When you change the language, the entire meaning shifts. Nietzsche would not soften his words. He would say, change the way you name yourself, starting now. Don't say, I'm too sensitive. Say, I feel deeply, but I choose to use it rather than be consumed by it. Don't say, I'm easily hurt. Say, I refuse to betray myself. Don't say, I'm afraid of being disliked. Say, I don't need approval to exist. Language is not wordplay. It is a command issued directly to your brain. Each time you speak differently, you force yourself to carve a new path. And if you repeat it often enough, what was once the reflex of submission will transform into the reflex of mastery. Nietzsche believed that strength is not the absence of falling, but the courage to face the contradictions within yourself. When you reframe, you begin to see clearly. The obedience you once wore as pride was never virtue. It was rewarded surrender. And only when you call it by its real name do you stand a chance of tearing it apart. Imagine you walk into a meeting. Normally, you nod and let things slide. But today, you say no. Clear, short, without apology. Others will bristle. They will label you selfish. But that reaction itself is proof that you've broken the cycle. Remember this: when you reframe, the world will push back. It needs you to be predictable. It fears you are dangerous. Nietzsche would tell you, let them fear. Only when you are dangerous enough are you truly free. From this moment on, choose a declaration for yourself. Short, sharp, unapologetic. It could be, I was not born to ask for permission, or I will not betray myself again. So that each time you are about to compromise, that sentence cuts through like a blade, slicing away the old shell. When you live by a new language, your presence changes. People will stop seeing you as harmless. They will listen. They will hesitate. Sometimes they will fear, not because you are hostile, but because you have returned to your primal instinct. The very thing once labeled dangerous, but in truth, it is freedom. You've heard enough about weakness. Now it's time to erase it, not with theory, but with action. Nietzsche would never tell you to wait one more day. He would say, change begins on the very first morning. Step 1. Reclaim your mornings. When you wake up, do not grab your phone. Not because the phone is evil, but because each time you open a screen before you open yourself, you've already allowed the world to dictate your day. Instead, sit up, breathe deeply, and ask, what do I choose today? Not, what do they choose for me? That question trains the habit of sovereignty. Step 2. Train your language. Each day, correct just one sentence. When you want to say yes just to get by, try saying no. When you're about to say sorry, without truly being wrong, swallow it back. When you feel the urge to over-explain, stop at one sharp sentence. Language is where you lose your power fastest, and it is also where you reclaim it fastest. Step 3. Train your body. Stand tall, open your shoulders, and look straight ahead. The body is the mirror of the mind. Sit like prey, and you will think like prey. Walk as if you know you belong here, and others will be forced to see you differently. These 3 steps are simple, but repeated long enough, they become a silent declaration. You are no longer living as someone who asks for permission. If you continue living the way you always have, the script is already clear. You will be praised as kind, considerate, and selfless. But those praises serve only one purpose: to keep you exactly where society wants you: small, agreeable, easy to control. The cost is that you slowly vanish, day after day. You will live a predictable life, a life no one remembers because you never left a single cut upon this world. Nietzsche would call that the worst corruption, not death, but existing as a shadow. And if you don't stop, weakness will not only take your strength, it will strip you of your identity. In the end, you won't even know what you want. You'll only know what you must do to be accepted. But if you dare to change, the reward is just as clear. You don't need to shout to prove your power. Your very presence will be enough to command attention. You won't need to chase approval, because you'll finally know your value doesn't come from the crowd. And for the first time in years, you will feel something rare: wholeness. You won't have to bend, won't have to pretend. You will stand upright, and that alone will be enough. Nietzsche once warned, "He who cannot command himself will always be commanded by others." This is the final philosophy. Freedom is never given. It belongs only to those dangerous enough to seize it. So the last question is this: do you have the courage to stop betraying yourself and begin living as one who commands himself? If you do, then from this point on, weakness will be nothing more than a memory. The weakness you once carried was never your essence. It was only a shell society taught you to wear. And now that you've seen it, you cannot unsee it. You may pretend, you may keep nodding and smiling, but inside you will know that is no longer you. Once the truth is revealed, there are only 2 choices. Either you rise, or you live as a traitor to yourself. Nietzsche never wrote for the crowd. He wrote for those who dare to stand alone, for those willing to make the collective uneasy simply by being real. And if you've come this far, perhaps you've begun to hear that whisper within you, the call to return to instinct, to the strength that never truly left you. Do one small thing right now. Write down a single line about what you will no longer compromise on. Just one. That will be your beginning. And from the moment you put pen to paper, you've declared to yourself, "I do not need permission to exist." The road ahead will not be easy. But remember, the danger you once feared is the very freedom that has been waiting for you. And in the next video, we will open another door, one that leads to powers most people spend their entire lives too afraid to ever touch.